Alright, Chapter 19, Parametric Constraints. You will learn in this chapter what are parametric constraints, geometrical, parametric constraints, dimensional. What are parametric constraints? Software like Inventor had the concept of the parametric constraints a long time ago since it designed software but not drafting software. Now Autocad has included with the concept that hence we consider the Autocad the design tool as well as the drafting tool. Parametric constraints are geometrical or dimensional. First step will set with the relation between the different objects like parallel, horizontal, concentric, etc. Dimensional constraints will impose a certain dimension on a line or a radius with an arc or a circle. It can also have the relation between two or more objects writing in the formula. With this in hand, the designer will have the ability to express his or her own design intent without the fear of somebody alter the design accidentally, intentionally, or intentionally way is designed to hold by itself with the necessary measures to keep objects as they are. This is a huge step for Autocad, which makes it competitive with the other software with a huge specific category coming pages. We'll discover the two types of constraints, how we can apply them to objects they are, geometric constraints, dimensional constraints. Using geometric constraints. Geometric constraints have the rules for the object. You can decide with a line always with a horizontal but perpendicular to another line. In addition, with the set of the two circles that always share the same center point and so on. In order to reach these steps, type of the constraints of the Parametric tab, locate the geometric panel. Panels show 12 different types of constraints. Other buttons like auto constraint button with the show and hide buttons. We'll discuss each one of them in the coming pages. Using coincident constraints. Locate geometric panel with a coincident button. GOM's constraints command. According to AutoCAD, definition for the constraint will constrain with the 2 point with the coincident with the point lie anywhere of the object extension of the object. We'll see with the following prompts. First point with the object and the auto constraint object will select with the point or object to object. Command will require the basic method to select with the 2 points of the two existing objects. The first object will stay in place, yet the second will move to connect with the first object. A small blue square will point to connecting two objects. First object, and then another variation of the command to select with the other object rather than selecting a point on an object. At first prompt, right click and select with the other object option. You'll see a prompt asking you to select with the desired object, and once you select it, the following prompt will show with a selected point or multiple. If you select another point on another object, first object will stay in place and the object will link extension first object just like the following. First object. If you use multiple options, you'll see the following prompt. Select point. You'll be able to select the multiple points to link them to the first object using the previous rule of the following example. The three object coincidence with the first object connected with the other endpoint. The user select any of the desired points. Using collinear constraints to locate the geometrical point, select with the collinear button. According to the AutoCAD definition for the constraint, with the constraints, two lines to lie on the same infinite line, we will see with the following prompts. Select the first object or multiple, select second object first multiple with the select first line, which will stay intact. Select with the second line, which will move with the collinear. Check the following illustration. If you select multiple option, you will allow the several lines to be collinear. Using geometric constraint. Locate with the geometric panel, select with the concentric button according to the AutoCAD definition of the constraint. With the constraint selected circles, arcs, and ellipses to have the same center point. You'll see the following prompts. First and second object. Click the following illustration using fixed constraint. Geometric button. Select with the fixed button with according to AutoCAD definition of constraint with a point or a curve to a fixed location orientation relative to the world coordinate system. You'll see the following prompt and select point or object to have the will select with the point of the object. Select with the object option to be allowed. Select desired object. Check the following illustration will show the two cases. Fixed and fixed constraints. Use parallel constraints. Locate geometric panel with the select with the parallel button. Constraint. Geometric. According to the AutoCAD constraints will constrain the two lines to be parallel. You see the following prompts. First and second object. First object will be the current angle with the second object will rotate to the same angle with the first. Check the following illustration. Using perpendicular constraint. With the geometric panel, select with the perpendicular button. According to the AutoCAD definition for the constraint, will constrain with the two lines of polyline segmented with a maintained 90-degree angle to each other. The following prompts. First and second object. First object will keep the current angle. The second object will rotate and make it at 90 degrees relative to the first object with the following illustration. Using horizontal constraint. The geometric panel, select with the horizontal button. According to the AutoCAD definition, constraints will constrain a line or pair of lines parallel to the axis currently the user coordinated system. Following the prompt, select with an object 2 points. If you select the object become horizontal, the command will end. End point name of the action point will remain on the other end. Will move to check the following illustration. The end of the nearest to the selection. So for the 2 points option, you see the following prompt. First and second point option will make sure for the 2 points selected to form an imaginary horizontal line shown. For example, first point and the horizontal point. Now, although a polyline is considered a single object, if you use a constraint on it, an AutoCAD will treat it with an edge object alone. Vertical constraint. Locate geometric panel, select the vertical button. The command is identical to the above command, allowing objects to point over the vertical. Use the tangent constraints panel with select with the tangent button. According to the AutoCAD definition for the constraint, will contain constraints two curves to maintain a point of tangent to each other of their extension. We'll see the following. Select first and second object. The first object will stay in the current place, but the second object will move you to the nearest tangent point close to the current position. Check the following illustration. Using smoothing constraints, location geometric panel will select with the smooth button. According to the AutoCAD definition for the constraint, with the spline to be a continuous maintained G2 continuing with another spline, line, arc, or polyline. We'll see with the following prompt. First and spline, second curve. First object should be a spline, but second object anything like a spline, line, arc, or polyline. For the following illustration will demonstrate the continuity concept. You should be careful, although the selected objects of the point, which will highlight during the selecting, it was very important to end result. Using symmetric constraint, locate geometric panel, select with the symmetric button. According to the AutoCAD definition, constraint will contain two curves of the points where the object maintains symmetry with the selected line. Will live with the following prompts. First object, second 2 points, selected second object, symmetry line. Simulate horizontal command becomes with the same prompt. Will select with the two other points, but the first object will maintain with the current angle. Will select with the object, rotate with the mirror of the image for the first object with around the symmetric line selected. Checking the following illustration. Using equal constraint with the locate geometric panel, select with the equal button. According to the AutoCAD definition, constraints will constrain the two lines or a polygon segment to maintain equal lengths, arcs, and circle to maintain equal radius values. Will set with the following prompts. First object and multiple second object. The first object maintains length with the radius of the arc and circles. The second object will change the length of the match to the first object and select with a multiple option. Make the length of the first object multiple lines rather than a single line. Check with the following illustration. First object. Alright, 19.3. Geometric constraint settings. To control the display with the geometric constraints, use the setting with the dialog box. To issue the command with the geometric panel. Click with the arrow to the lower right hand corner of the plane. You'll see with the dialog box. Geometric dimensional and auto constraint. You'll see with the default with the constraint with the display with the user can select the high 12th constraint with the drawings. Also control the following with the display with the only constraint bar with the four object with the current plane constraint bar with the transparency value. Whether or not to show the constraint bar after applying constraint with the selected object. Whether or not to show the constraint bar just after it's selected. What is Infer Constraint? With the preview of the dialog box, one checkbox with the overlook with the infer with the geometric constraint with the checkbox with the top left of the dialog box. So with the infer constraint will the flip of the process with the constraint with the AutoCAD will with the constraint with the drafting rather than drafting. After drafting, also with the commands of the fillet and chamfer will be affected to achieve the command. Activate with the command, go to the status bar, click the following button. After the infer constraints off, or constraint infer. Command. After you switch with the checkbox with AutoCAD will apply with the constraints to all of the objects with the add, with the drawing, with the proper constraint depending on the object with the attached objects to it. Don't assume with the method of the replacement of the original method to discover the beginning of the chapter because you will be mistaken with this method that will help you complete your work in fewer steps. That's all. Let's discover the following example. Switch with the infer checkbox, start the line command with the draw vertical line. You know that the AutoCAD apply with the vertical constraint. Continue drawing a horizontal line. You know that the AutoCAD apply with the perpendicular constraint with the new horizontal line. Continue drawing another vertical line close with the rectangle. You'll notice that the AutoCAD apply with the perpendicular constraint along with the coincident on all corner points. Start the fillet command and discover the radius suitable value with the fillet one over the corner of the nose of the AutoCAD. Apply with the tangent constraints between the two lines and adding in the arc with the allowing coincident constraint with the two ends of the arc. We'll see with something like the following. Your right button, click button on the status bar, select settings. You'll see that the same dialog box previous section which controls the constraint is displayed on the screen and which is not. What is auto constraint? Auto constraint command is applied with the geometric constraint to be the selected objects based on the current relationship between these objects with the select with the constraint apply with the setting dialog box auto constraint. With the issue of the command, allocate the geometric panel with select with the auto constraint button or auto constraint command line. You'll see the following prompt. Select the object setting. First step of the settings, you'll see the following dialog box and auto constraint settings, auto constraint per XA, priority context types apply, and then the tangent objects must share with the insert point. Intersection point, perpendicular object with the intersection point, tolerance, distance, and angles, move down, up, down, select clear for all, reset, OK, cancel, help. Use this dialog, you can do any of the following. Move the constraints up and down with a priority, each of the constraints, turn off on one of the constraint, clicking with the green arrow, use the select and clear all reset buttons, check for the tangent object with the intersection point on not, or not, choose the perpendicular object with the intersection point or not. You can also see three of the normal 12 constraints will not be used. They are symmetrical, fixed, and smooth. Let's assume the following example. You have the following shape. Before you apply with the constraint, set the whole object with the even grips, trying to move the one of the grips. Take note of the movement and select the auto constraint command. Select the object with the press enter. The following message will appear. 16 constraints applied to the 8 objects. The picture will change to select the object with the grips. If you try to move the one over the grips, it will feel all of the objects move it together with a coherent set of objects, understanding each of the other, keep the relation provided at all times. And final, with a note with the auto constraint should note that the first prompt with the coincident with the constraint contains the auto constraint. Second, select the first point, other object, auto constraint object, which means that if you select the object with the select object, all of them will hold the coincident constraint. 19.6. Constraint bar and showing and hiding. Constraint bar is a small bar with appears to the side of the object after you have applied with the geometric constraint. However, the small bar will make it highlighted along with the object. In fact, check with the following illustration. On the other hand, however, over the object geometric constraints applied to with the constraint bars as will highlight as well. Occasionally, one object may hold more than one constraint length, so the bar will show more buttons. Right-click the button, the constraint will show the following menu: delete, hide all constraints, constraint bar setting. Following listing with the command delete with the select with the geometric constraints. All you can use the normal delete keyboard. Hide a current constraint bar even if the current contains more than one button. Hide all constraint with the current drawing. Show the constraint bar settings discussed previously. User can move the constraint bar with the default position in any order the desired position. Hold any bar into any place with click and drag with a new position. Showing and hiding. Use the control visibility with the constraint bar. Use the control whether to show whether or not all of the object for the sum of the object. Issue the set with the command locate geometric panel. Issue one of the following. These commands are show hide. You can select the object, show with the constraint sums, with the hide, show all will all show all constraints with all the objects, hide all will hide all the constraints for all the other for all objects. 9.7. Restricting, relaxing, restricting over constraining objects. Relaxing constraints. Relaxing objects and removing some of the constraints applied with in order to fully fill command, which once you change the object status, assuming that you have a line parallel constraint with a vertical line, you try to rotate it. How will the Autocad respond with such action? You'll see the following message come up. A constraint dialog box, relax or maintain with the current constraints. As you can see, the Autocad will give you either the relaxation constraints or the maintain with them. Selecting reconstraint. Relaxing of the constraints will mean removing only with the associated constraints which allow the commands to be fulfilled. Over constraining an object, let's assume they apply with a horizontal constraint line, then apply with the perpendicular constraint line attached to the vertical to the second line near the meaning of the object over constraint. The Autocad will not allow this to happen. It will show the following message: geometric constraints not applied. Complex existing constraints would over constrain the geometry. The message means Autocad will not allow the action, hence the user will click the OK or cancel to abort the process using dimensional constraints. Alright, geometric constraints are not enough. We need to set with the dimensional constraints that would apply with the constraints concept with the dimensional constraint to specify the length of the line, with the angle between the two lines, radius of the diametric for the arc of the circle, even event with the different dimensional constraints using the formula. To reach all dimensional constraint command with the parametric tab, then locate the dimensional panel. Following discussion, all type of the dimensional constraints, linear, horizontal, vertical constraint. The three different constraints with the deal with the distance between the points. If you click on the button, you'll see the following options: linear, horizontal, and vertical. According to the Autocad definition, linear will constrains either horizontal or vertical between the 2 points, even if the 2 points from an angle other than 0 to 90, 180, or 270 degrees. Horizontal command constrain with the x distance between the 2 points. Vertical will constrain with the y distance between the points. You'll see with the following prompt. You see that you specify the first constraint point with the object with the second constraint point with the dimension with the line, location, dimension, text. And prompts you with 3 commands are the same. If you select the first point, a red cross will circle with a variable. With a select with the second point, but there will be a specified with a dimension line, just like it with the dimension. Therefore, then whenever they accept the real measured distance by pressing enter to input your own value, of course, the length according to the new value. If this first prompt you select the object option, you'll see the following prompts. Select object, specify distance, line, location, dimension, text. Following illustration show the shape of the dimensional constraint. Using a line constraint, with the command with the dimensional plan with respect to the line button, according to the Autocad definition of the constraint, will constrain the distance between the 2 points, whether the same object with a different object. You'll see with the following prompts. Specify with the first constraint point, object point, or line, or 2 lines object. Specify with the first constraint point, you will be asked for the specify the second point. If you use the object option, the user will be asked to select the object. If you choose the point and line option, you will see with the following prompts. Specify the constraint and point or line, select line. Specify the dimension line, location, dimension, text 2.22466. Usual select the point on the line, the selecting line, make sure that the selecting the right point with the select with the two lines option. You'll see the following point. Prompt select first line, second line to match make parallels dimension. Specify the dimension, location, dimension, text. Selecting two line object, selecting the line the which will be made parallel to the first line, aligning constraints, control the distance between the two lines. Following illustration show the line constraints. Using radial diameter constraints to issue the command locate the dimensional panel. Then select with the radial diameter button. According to the Autocad definition for the two constraints, will constrain with the radius of the diameter of the circle of the arc. You'll see with the following problem. Select the arc or circle of the dimension test, specify the dimension file location. Following illustration show the radial diameter constraints. Using angular constraint, issue the command with the dimensional panel angular button. According to AutoCAD definition, angular will constrain the angle between the two line poly objects within the arc of the 3 points. You'll see the following prompts. First line or arc or 3 point. Selected line, specify the dimension line and location dimension text. The user select two lines, poly segments over the arc. If you select 3 points option, you'll see the following prompts. Specify the angle of the vertex, first angle constraint, second angle constraint. User will select the vertex point first and then two other points with the form and angle. The following illustration show the angular constraint. Alright, using convert command, issue with the command load with dimensional panel with the convert button. Command with the convert normal dimension with the dimension constraints. You'll see the following. Select associate the dimension with the convert, associate the dimension with the convert. Select the desired dimension of the convert and constrain. The following illustration will show the process. Controlling dimensional constraint. With this section will discuss how to control the dimensional constraint by using constraint section dialog box. Deleting dimensional constraint with showing and hiding dimensional constraint. Constructional settings dialog box. The dialog box will control the appearance of the dimensional constraint on the screen with the issue with the command with the parametric tab with the locate with the dimensional panel. Select constraint settings of the dimensional button. The following dialog box will come up. Constraint settings, dimensional control format name and extend expression. Show lock on with the notion constraints hidden dynamic constraint with the selected object. Dialog box with control with the appear of the dynamic dimensional constraint with that R3 choice the name value with the name of the expression. The user select whether show or hide the lock symbol with the appear with the name of the measure value. Finally, user select with will show the dimensional constraint for any hidden dimensional constraint with which you select the object. Check the following example. In the previous picture, dimensional constraint was hidden, but when selected with the object, dimensional constraint appeared. Deleting constraints. User can use the normal delete key on the keyboard to get rid of the dimensional geometric constraints. Any another way we can be located with the manage panel and then select with the detail delete constraint panel button. Following prompt will appear. All constraints will be removed from selected object. Select object. Deleting the select. Keep the selected undesired constraints. Press enter for the end of the command. Alright, showing and hiding dimensional constraint. These commands are similar to what we've learned in geometric drawing constraint selection with the issue of the command with the dimensional panel. Select with one of the following 3 buttons. These 3 buttons are show, hide, and show the hiding constraint. With the hide visible constraint selecting, you will see with the following prompts. Select object, enter option, show and hide, or show. Show all the button will show all of the dimension constraint. With hide, it will show all the dimensions constraints. See with the parameter manager. Parameter manager is a play with a created equation that involve the dimensional constraint, hence link with the dimensional constraint together. When you use the method of the change the one over the dimensional constraint, the effect of the other as well. But in order for us to create the right equations, AutoCAD allows us to create the user-defined parameters for the issue command with the manage panel. Select with the parameters manager button. Parameters is the command line. You'll see something like the following palette with filters named the expression values, formulas, and axes. Invert filter. Parameters manager palette with a display with showing the existing dimensional constraint parameters. Also see with the AutoCAD with the default names, but the user ability to rename the parameters. Simply click with the name once. You'll be able to input with your own names. Add user creating equation. Include one or more of the parameters from the following examples. In the previous menu, whenever you change the width or the length, it changes as well with the user create with his or her own parameters. Create with the user defined parameters. Use the following button. Creates a new parameter, input with a new user-defined parameter expression if valid, otherwise input with current value layer, include with the expression involved with the dimensional constraint parameter, looking with the example below. A previous example showed the length of the width are now linked with a user parameter called width underscore I. AutoCAD provides filters to categorize your parameters and categories over you're making. To create a new filter, click the following button, show the asterisk over the top of the parameter group or Alt-G. Once you click the button, the new filter will add. Simply type the name of the filter, then press enter, fill the parameters, drag the parameters to the right, and drop them in the name filter. You'll get something like the following. You'll see something like the following. Show that the user is either differently, normal parameters equation starting with the fx of the user, overwrite the equation, double clicking and inputting his or her own value. Alright, 911, what is the annotational constraint mode? Black display with the after you add the dimensional constraint will not be printed. Zoom in and zoom out commands will not affect with the display side, but means you will do two tasks instead of doing only one. User will normally add normal dimension, add dimensional constraint with the Autocad code and help with you workload, and you'll no need to be done only once. However, the user's choice to convert all the dimension constraint with the annotation constraint with the annotations constraints will be printed and will be used with the current dimension style. There are two ways to do that. Before you start with the use of the change of the mode with the annotation constraints with this, for the method the user will combine with the two action with a single action. And for the dimensional constraints already played with the user, converting them to using the properties palette. Annotating constraint mode before you're starting with the dimensional constraint, locate the dimensional panel, click with the arrow button to show the more buttons, make sure the annotational constraint mode is selected. Now adding the dimensional constraint, use the normal ways we discussed previously with something like the following. Use the dimensional constraint, dialog box, use the change choice, choose the show with the hide block symbol, the one show with the name. Converting dimensional constraint with the annotational. If you already play with the dimensional constraint, you can choose to convert them to the annotational constraint. You use the property palette with the select with the desired design. Dimensional constraint with the converted to the right click with the select with the property. You'll see the following palette with the constraint form and select the annotational instead of the dynamic. Using dimensional grips, you can manipulate dimensional constraints. You with the grip the following image with include three types of dimensional category constraint, namely linear, aligned, and angular. As you can see, with the grip in the middle, with the E for the dimension, with the constraint, will move the whole block with the back and forth with the other two. For arrows will circle the dimension with the constraint, with a hinge, with the stretch, with the out object by itself, with the dimension parameters with their off with the grip, depending on the type. In the example you see with the radius and the diameter constraint with the grip can be relocated. The dimensional constraint block will radius with the one arrow with the chain with the value, with the radius with the diameter, have two arrows with the chain with the value in either direction. Arc and circles affected by this change. Practice. Notes, chapter review answers, chapter 20, dynamic blocks.